Welcome. Today, we are pushing off from the shore. We are leaving behind the solid, familiar world of land and stepping onto a vast, restless, and utterly indifferent ocean. We are embarking on a journey not just across the globe, but into the darkest corners of the human soul. It is a story of a ship, a captain, and a whale. But it is also a story of obsession, of fate, and of the terrifying, beautiful, and ultimately unknowable power of nature itself. We are opening Moby Dick, or, The Whale, the strange, sprawling, and magnificent masterpiece of Herman Melville. Herman Melville was not a philosopher in an ivory tower. He was a sailor. He had rounded Cape Horn, jumped ship in the South Pacific, and lived among cannibals. He had hunted whales, felt the spray of the ocean on his face, and seen the immense, terrifying beauty of the great leviathans of the deep. He knew the sea. And when he sat down to write his great American novel, he poured all of that experience, all of that terror and wonder, into a book that was unlike anything that had ever been written before. It was published in 1851. And it was a colossal failure. The critics hated it. The public was bewildered by its strange mix of adventure, philosophy, and exhaustive, obsessive detail about the anatomy of whales. Melville, who had poured his entire soul into this book, was destroyed. He died in obscurity, his masterpiece forgotten. It was not until the early 20th century, decades after his death, that the world finally caught up with Herman Melville. Scholars and writers rediscovered Moby Dick and recognized it for what it truly is, not a failed adventure story, but a work of staggering genius. A dark, sprawling, and endlessly deep meditation on obsession, on the nature of good and evil, and on humanity's desperate, doomed attempt to understand a universe that may, in the end, be incomprehensible. And it all begins with one of the most famous and deceptively simple sentences in the English language. 3 words. Call me Ishmael. Part 1, Ishmael and the Preparations for the Voyage. Ishmael is a man running from something. He does not tell us what, exactly. He just tells us that he is filled with a damp, drizzly November, in his soul. He has a strange, creeping impulse to knock people's hats off and to step into the street and methodically knock people's hats off. He is going to sea as a substitute for putting a pistol to his head. The sea, for Ishmael, is not an adventure. It is medicine. It is an escape from the hypoge, the deep, existential melancholy that threatens to swallow him. He is a thoughtful, observant, and deeply human narrator, and his voice is our guide through the horror and the wonder that is to come. His journey begins in the cold, grey whaling port of New Bedford. He seeks shelter at a crowded, smoke-filled and called the Spooter Inn, run by a man named Peter Coffin, a name that does little to lift his spirits. The inn is full, and he is told he must share a bed with a mysterious, absent harpooner. The harpooner, he learns, is a dark-complexioned man who sells shrunken heads in the street. Ishmael spends a terrified, sleepless night anticipating the arrival of this cannibal monster. And when Queequeg finally appears, he is not a monster. He is a tall, powerful, and deeply dignified man, his entire body covered in a maze of intricate, dark blue tattoos. He is a prince from the South Seas, a man of strange rituals and deep, quiet honor. And that night, in a scene of pure, absurd, and deeply human comedy, the terrified civilized man and the calm, noble, savage, become the closest of friends. Queequeg puts his arm around Ishmael, and Ishmael, to his own astonishment, falls peacefully asleep. The next morning, Ishmael and Queequeg travel together to Nantucket, the holy ground of American whaling. The scene is a stark, gray, and windswept landscape, a place that feels like the edge of the world. Queequeg, after a long, silent vigil with his little black idol, announces that his gods have told him he must choose the ship himself. He and Ishmael wander the docks, inspecting the vessels that are preparing for their long, dangerous journeys. They settle on an old, strange, and somehow melancholic ship called the Pequod. Her name is that of a vanished Native American tribe. She is decorated with the bones and teeth of her victims, a ship that seems to carry the memory of death in her very timbers. The owners, Captains Peleg and Bildad, are old, salty, and comically tyrannical Quaker businessmen. They drive a hard bargain, but they are impressed by Queequeg's skill with a harpoon. Ishmael signs the contract. They are to be crewmen on the Pequod. But a strange unease hangs in the air. The captain of the ship, they learn, is a man named Ahab. And he is not present. As they leave the office, a strange, disheveled man, a prophet or a madman, staggers up to them. His name is Elijah. He mutters dark, cryptic warnings about Captain Ahab. He asks if they have signed their souls away. He asks if they know what happened to the captain's leg. The air grows cold. The shadow of the absent captain falls over the entire venture. But the contract is signed. The voyage is set. Ishmael and Queequeg board the Pequod. The men on the docks wave, but Ishmael sees no one he knows. No family. No friends. They are alone. The ropes are cast off, and the ship, heavy and dark, slides silently into the gray, waiting sea. The adventure has begun. But the true, terrifying nature of their captain, and their quest, is still hidden from them. Part 2, Ahab and his curse. For days, the Pequod sailed south, and the captain remained a ghost. Ishmael, working the rigging and learning the brutal, messy art of whaling, caught no glimpse of him. The ship was run with a quiet, grim efficiency by the three mates, Starbuck, a brave and thoughtful Quaker who feared God, Stubb, a jovial, carefree man who feared nothing, and Flask, a short, stout, and unimaginative fellow who feared only whales. But the man they all served, the hidden sun around which the entire dark universe of the Pequod orbited, remained unseen. Then, one cold morning, Ishmael came on deck and saw him. Ahab was standing on the quarterdeck, a tall, gaunt, and terrifying figure. He looked like a man cut away from the stake, after the fire has done its work. His face was a grim, pale mask, branded with a long, livid, whitish scar that ran from his hairline, down across his face, and disappeared beneath his collar, a wound that seemed to have seared his very soul. And instead of a leg, he stood on a stark, polished, and gleaming white bone carved from the jaw of a sperm whale. He said nothing. He just stood there, his eyes fixed on the horizon, a man who was no longer fully of this world. Days passed. Ahab remained distant, a brooding, silent presence. Then, one afternoon, he called the entire crew to the quarterdeck. He stood before them, this strange collection of sailors from every corner of the earth, and he nailed a single, shining Spanish gold doubloon to the mainmast. The crew murmured. A reward. Then, Ahab began to speak. He spoke of Moby Dick. The white whale. The crew had heard the legends. They knew of the great, ferocious, and seemingly immortal sperm whale with its distinctive snow-white hump and wrinkled brow, a creature that had crushed boats and killed whalemen by the dozen. Ahab, with a cold, terrifying fury, told them the truth. It was this whale that had taken his leg. And this whale was not just an animal. It was a mask. A pasteboard mask behind which Ahab saw an inscrutable, malignant power. All visible objects, he shouted, were but pasteboard masks. And he would strike through that mask. He would chase this white whale around the Horn, and around the Norway maelstrom, and around the perdition's flames before he gave it up. This was not a voyage for oil. This was a voyage for vengeance. And then, he held up a flagon of grog and called on the crew to drink to the death of Moby Dick. The wild, pagan harpooners, Queequeg among them, clinked their harpoons and drank with a savage, fiery passion. The mates, Starbuck chief among them, looked on with horror and a dawning, helpless despair. The pact with the devil had been sealed in rum and gold. Part 3, the whale, the philosophy, and the 9 meetings. The Pequod sailed on, and the hunt for the white whale became the single, all-consuming purpose of the ship. The whale itself, however, was not just a physical quarry. It was, for Melville, a canvas for the entire universe. The book, in the chapters that follow, becomes a strange, obsessive encyclopedia. We learn the minute, scientific classifications of whales, their anatomy, their history, their portrayal in art. We learn the brutal, bloody, and deeply physical process of rendering a slaughtered whale, a creature of sublime, godlike beauty, into barrels of oil to light the lamps of the world. For Ishmael, the whale is a symbol of everything that is vast, unknown, and terrifying in the world. It is the monstrousest and most mountainous of all creatures, the Leviathan of the Bible, the dragon of the deep. And the whiteness of the whale, for Ishmael, is the most terrifying aspect of all. Whiteness is not just the absence of color. It is the color of snow, of the polar bear, of the great white shark. It is the color of beauty, but also of terror. It is the colorless, all color of atheism. It is the face of a universe that is utterly indifferent to human suffering. As the ship sails on, the crew begins to absorb Ahab's dark energy. There is a grim, fatalistic momentum to the voyage, a feeling that they are hurtling towards an appointed destiny. To heighten this sense of cosmic significance, Melville introduces a series of 9 encounters with other ships. Each meeting, or gam, is a dark omen. The Goni, an old, battered ship, passes by like a ghost, its crew unable to hear Ahab's desperate, burning question, "Hast seen the white whale?" The Town Ho, its crew tells a tale of a mutiny, a divine judgment, and a terrifying encounter with the very whale they seek. Most poignant of all is the encounter with the Rachel, a ship that has just lost a whaleboat and its captain's young son to the sea. The captain of the Rachel begs Ahab to help him search for his lost child. But Ahab, cold and implacable, refuses. There is only one quarry for the Pequod. He abandons the grief-stricken father to the empty, merciless ocean. These meetings are the chart of Ahab's descent. Each one strips away another layer of his humanity. Part 4, the final, 3-day chase. And then, finally, Ahab himself sees it. His own, fierce, hawk-like eyes are the first to spot the spout. It is a low, bushy, and spectral white plume against the dark horizon. Moby Dick. The boats are lowered. The chase is on. The first day, Ahab leads the attack himself, his boat flying over the waves. But the white whale is a monster of pure, intelligent fury. It swims directly beneath Ahab's boat, its vast, white form a moving mountain of doom, and then it rises, its tremendous jaws opening wide, and bites the boat clean in two. Ahab, thrown into the sea, is helpless, clinging to wreckage. The Pequod rescues him and drives the whale away. The first round is a devastating, humiliating defeat. The second day dawns, and the whale is sighted again. Ahab, his ivory leg shattered but his will unbroken, is again in the lead boat. The battle is even more ferocious. Harpoons are struck. Blood darkens the water. But the whale, in a frenzy of pain and rage, attacks again, smashing the boats together and severing the line of Ahab's own boat. His ivory leg is snapped off at the stump. The Parsi, Fedallah, the dark, demonic harpooner who is Ahab's shadow self, is tangled in the lines and dragged overboard, vanishing beneath the waves. The crew, exhausted and horrified, pull Ahab from the wreckage. Starbuck, the good Quaker, begs his captain to stop. He calls the pursuit madness, blasphemy. But Ahab, his eyes burning with the fire of the damned, refuses. Ahab is forever Ahab, he cries. The path is fixed. The third day will be the end. On the third day, the white whale is sighted for the final time. The sea is calm, the sky a pitiless, bright blue. Ahab orders the boats lowered one last time. He stands in the bow of his boat, his shattered leg replaced by a makeshift spar, his face a pale, terrible mask of his former self. Moby Dick breaches. The boats attack. And then, the whale does something no one expects. It turns. It does not attack the boats. It attacks the ship. With a terrible, deliberate, and seemingly intelligent fury, the great white head rams the Pequod amidships. The timbers of the old, doomed vessel shatter like matchsticks. Water pours into the wound. The Pequod is sinking. The great chase is over. The prophecy, that Ahab would die only when he saw two hearses, is fulfilled. The ship, carrying the bodies of its crew, is the first. The whale, carrying the tangled corpse of Fedallah lashed to its back, is the second. Ahab, standing in his sinking boat, sees the truth. The whale is not a demon. It is just a whale. But the fury, the obsession, will not let him go. In his final, magnificent, and utterly damned act, he hurls his harpoon with all his remaining strength. The line hisses out. And the flying, serpentine coil catches him around the neck. He is pulled, in an instant, from his boat, and is gone. The Pequod sinks. The great, circling vortex of the sea swallows the ship, the crew, and the last, floating coffin lifebuoy that had been built for the dead Queequeg. All is silence. The sea closes over them, as if nothing had happened. Only Ishmael, the storyteller, the one who was called to witness, survives. He is pulled from the water by the Rachel, the very ship that had been searching for its own lost children, and that, in finding a wandering orphan, finds a kind of redemption. And so, the great voyage of the Pequod comes to an end. The ship is gone. The captain is dead. And we are left, like Ishmael, floating on the vast, empty sea, asking the question that has haunted readers for over a century and a half. What is the white whale? Is it God? Is it the devil? Is it the indifferent, crushing force of nature? Or is it simply a whale? A creature, immense and powerful, onto which a madman projected his own fury, his own fear, and his own unquenchable need to find a single, definable enemy in a universe that is too vast and too complex to ever be understood? Melville does not give us a simple answer. The genius of Moby Dick is that it contains all of these meanings, and none of them, all at once. It is a book about the limits of knowledge. About the horror of existence. And about the strange, terrible, and beautiful compulsion to hunt for meaning, even when the hunt will destroy us. I am Melesias. This has been the story of Moby Dick, as I have understood it. Thank you for listening. If this journey into the abyss has moved you, please subscribe. And the next time you look out at the vast, unknowable ocean, remember the Pequod. And remember that the greatest monsters are not always the ones we hunt. Sometimes, they are the ones we carry within us. Until next time.